Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for filling the hall for the 256th consecutive meeting of the Lexington Veterans Association. I'm Linda Dixon, and I'm so happy to welcome you on behalf of the association. We haven't met since June, and there's a lot going on. We have a wonderful program for you, and it will be my pleasure to introduce our speaker, but we actually have quite a few announcements and a very short presentation to go through. You're probably saying, please tell me more about that marvelous display against the wall, all those poppies. Well, you're going to learn more about it. And we do have just a few matters of business that we want to undertake. But first things first, let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jim Ramsey will come forward and he will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Now, my first task, unfortunately, is a sad one because we have lost a wonderful member of our group, a great human being, a wonderful citizen of Lexington and of the greater society. And I'm talking about Dr. Dan Plante. Many of you know Dr. Dan because he was the pediatrician to your children. But he was also a wonderful member of the Lexington Veterans and a loyal veteran of the United States Armed Forces. And I would just like to read a few paragraphs about him in his memory. Dan Plante, MD, died on August 18 in Albany, New York, as the result of a fall. It was an accidental death, and he died too soon. Dan was a Lexington pediatric physician. He was a Vietnam-era veteran of the U.S. Air Force. After graduating from Dartmouth College and completing his medical training at the University of Vermont, he began his service as pediatrician and chief of professional services at the 7206 USAF dispensary in Athens, Greece in 1965, followed by other assignments in the Mediterranean, retiring in 1969 at the rank of captain. Dan was an active member and supporter of the Boy Scouts of America, the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra, Project STEP, and the Boston University Tanglewood Orchestra. He volunteered at Lex Eat Together, serving meals to the hungry and the lonely. He was an accomplished French horn player, and for his entire life he played in various symphony orchestras and bands. He was also an enthusiastic supporter of the Lexington Veterans Association and of veterans and their needs. And he always did something special. He escorted Will Cochran, a World War II veteran, to these meetings, making sure that Will was able to enjoy the companionship and the intellectual stimulation of our programs. Well, Will is now without a companion. And I mention this in case anyone might be inclined to step in and fill Dan's role. Let us now please observe a moment of silence in memory of a great human being and a true loss to our organization, Dr. Dan Plante. Last month, our nation lost a true statesman and patriot, Senator John McCain of Arizona. Senator McCain was a model for all of us. He exemplified the qualities of honor, courage, patriotism, service, selflessness, and bipartisanship. Let us honor this great American with a moment of silence. May we all keep him in our memory. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce Steve Hill, who is in our production booth. Steve, just want to come out and give a wave? Where are you, Steve? Steve is our new production assistant, helping Ed Loturco with our programs, and we thank him very much, and we just want to say hello. So you'll be seeing Steve at all of our meetings from now on. We have our fall speaker schedules. They are ready, they are printed. We had some out at the registration desk. If you didn't get a copy, if you would like to take a copy, Gresh Lattimore, Gresh, want to stand up, has a supply of them.
I'll bring them in.
And at the end of the session, if you would like a flyer, they're printed. See Gresh, he'll give you a copy. It will also be posted on the front page of our website.
You just answered the question.
I just answered, it'll be on the website. I would like just very quickly to introduce two guests who are here with us today. Major David Stalker and First Sergeant Martin Peterson. Major Stalker is Professor of Military Science and Commander of the Paul Revere Battalion, which is the Army's ROTC training battalion at MIT. You might remember that Lieutenant Colonel Peter Godfrey spoke to us earlier this year. Well, Major Stalker is Colonel Godfrey's replacement. And he just thought that our program today was something not to be missed. So he's out here today with his first sergeant, and we're delighted to have him with us. Glad to see you. Gina Rada, our veterans agent, has a quick word about this year's Veterans Breakfast.
I hope everybody's coming. It's Saturday, November the 3rd. Same place, same time, 8:30. The tickets are free for veterans. They used to be $5. We're not charging veterans anymore, but if a non-veteran comes, we will accept donations. And the tickets will be available at the Lexington Community Center starting next week, and probably Michelson's Shoe Store. So if you have questions, you can give me a call. I'm always at the community center. If you come in to get a ticket and you want to just stop in and say hi, I'm there Monday through Friday.
Thank you. Now, November 2018 is going to mark the 100th anniversary of the signing of the armistice that ended World War I. 100 years. That literally changed the course of history. And a town-wide collaboration of organizations here in Lexington is going to commemorate this anniversary with a host of activities, including community art, a lecture series, social events, newspaper articles, and a grand remembrance on Sunday, November 11, Veterans Day. Now, you're going to be learning a lot more about this through email, our website. We'll talk about it some more. But there are two dates I really would like you to remember and put on your calendar, because we want a strong veterans presence at these two dates. The first one is, and we'll We'll tell you about it more, don't worry. Thursday, November 1, 7 o'clock, at the Depot, the Lexington Historical Society. That's one of the lectures in the series. It's a lecture on World War I given by our own Dan Leclerc, who has spoken to us before. He's a World War I expert. The title of his talk is World War I, The End, the Failed Treaty and the Enduring Legacies. Our group, the Lexington Veterans, is sponsoring it that evening, so it would really be nice if we had a good Lex Vets
What's the date
showing
again?
up.
Oh,
November 1, Thursday. And you'll be getting lots of emails from us as a gentle reminder. Okay, the other day is Veterans Day itself, Sunday, November 11. It's on a Sunday this year. Sunday, November 11, 2 o'clock, Cary Hall, for the grand remembrance. Big ceremony. And again, strong veteran presence. Really appreciate it. Thank you for that. Now, let's get to these puppies. I would like to introduce Christina Gamota. Christina is, among many other things, a skilled artist and a volunteer extraordinaire. She was struck by the symbolism of the poppy as a way to remember veterans. And she wanted to make a meaningful contribution to veterans as a part of our commemoration project. She assembled a group of artists. And I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to let her tell her the story. She will explain this puppy project. And I am sure the Lexington Veterans is going to give her its full support. So, Christina, where are you? Please, to learn more about the Puppy Remembrance Project. Christina Gamota.
Thank you. How many of you are familiar with the poem In Flanders Fields? Quite a few. Well, I was not. So my story begins this way. Early this year,
Put it right up to you.
a poem in Flanders Fields was being discussed
That's it.
at an organization that I belong. I was not familiar, as I mentioned earlier, with this poem. I tried to understand how this humble red 4-petal flower was connected to this poem. So I decided to do some research of my own and learn the meaning and the history behind it. I'm very familiar with the simple red poppy. It grows in my birth country, Ukraine, like a weed among wheat. You also see this poppy across many fields in Western Europe. Why was it important to be in this poem? The fighting zones of World War I were devastated. Nature was murdered. Every sign of humanity was swept away. The woods and the roads had vanished. Nothing remained of the charming villages and their stone wall except clusters of red poppies. The spring of 1915 was quite warm in the countryside in Belgium and France. This particular poppy has 60,000 seeds in their pods, and it can take up to 80 years to germinate. The impact of the war made it happen. They were growing everywhere, in the makeshift graves and the trenches. This story also has 3 special individuals from 3 different countries: a doctor poet from Canada, an American teacher from Georgia, and a French woman who is recognized by the French as their French poppy lady, Anna Guerin. The Canadian doctor Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who fought in the Second Battle of Ypres in Belgium on May 3rd, 1915. At night, he performed a funeral ceremony for a special friend who was killed in a shell burst. The following day, he visited the site of unmarked crosses, where between the crosses, the poppies grow. He writes a 15-line poem. It is published in Punch magazine in London on December 1915. 3 years later, on November 9th, 1918, Moina Michael, the teacher from the University of Georgia, is in New York City at the YMCA, overseas War Secretary's headquarters. She's there to organize an international conference. That morning, when she was away, a soldier stops at her office and he places an issue of Ladies' Home Journal magazine on her desk with a marker on a page. Moina opens the magazine to the marked page and she sees a poem that she has read many times before, except this time, the 6 last lines have a very different meaning to her. She looks for a piece of paper to write down her thoughts. She finds a used envelope, and on its back, she writes her thoughts, a poem whose title is "We Shall Keep the Faith." And I would like to recite and share this with you. We shall keep the faith, oh, you who sleep in Flanders fields, sleep sweet to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high, we keep the faith with all who died. We cherish too the poppy red that grows on fields where valor's led. It seems to signal to the skies that blood of heroes never dies, but lends luster to the red of the flower that blooms above the dead in Flanders fields. And now the torch and poppy red we wear in honor of our dead. Fear not that ye have died for naught. We will teach the lesson that you wrote in Flanders fields. That day she makes a pledge to wear a red poppy as a symbol of remembrance. That same day later, there are 3 delegates who are attending the conference, and they stop at her office and they present her with a check of $10, a donation for the work and support she has given to many departing soldiers. She takes the $10 and buys 25 silk flowers for all those who are attending the conference. The remembrance poppy that was inspired by the World War I poem in Flanders fields becomes internationally recognized as a symbol of acknowledging those who have died. It was the inspiration of 2 women, one American and one French, who promoted the memorial flower as the means by which funds could be raised to support those in need of help, most especially servicemen and civilians, including orphan children who are suffering from physical and mental hardships as a result of war. Moina Michael, the poppy lady of the United States, called this poppy the miracle flower. Now in Lexington, as Linda has mentioned, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary of the end of World War I on November 11, and 2 poppy projects that came as an inspiration due to my research are honoring the 373 servicemen and women, yes, women, there were 9 of them, from Lexington who served our country and its allies in Army, Navy, and Marine Corps during the years 1914 to 1918. The 373 puppies are especially designed for each one of them. And 8 beautiful, commemorative, everlasting wood wreaths plaques have been commissioned to honor the fallen 8. Each one is signed and dated and has the name of the individual that they're honoring. They can be displayed outdoors because it is an outdoor-indoor type of wood, or you can have it in your house all year long. They will be at a reception at a silent auction at a private home on October 26th. Our group is under no umbrella of any organization. There are 20 of us, and we call ourselves friends, because that's what we are. Friends from different organizations who understand the needs to support the veterans. The puppies will be sold at different locations. Please, do support us. The money that we will raise will be going to the Veterans Relief Fund to assist the veterans and their families with unmet needs here in Lexington. Thank you very much.
I think Christina, a very important thing she didn't mention is the puppies they're asking for a $5 donation for each puppy. And if you haven't had a chance to look at the table, if you purchase a puppy, every puppy is individualized. There's a lovely card with it that says this puppy is in honor of a specific name, a specific individual who served in the war. So it's a lovely gesture, and Christina and her colleagues will be there after the talk, and I certainly hope they go home with a lot fewer puppies than they came with. It's a very worthy cause. And now, thank you so much. Let's get to what you came for. So here's a brief introduction of our speaker, John Katsaros. John was born and raised in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and he's lived there his whole life, except for the period between 1941 and 1945, when he served in the U.S. Army Air Force as an aerial gunner on a B-17 bomber. After living through a real-life experience, which is similar to a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie, which I'm not even going to attempt to talk about, John returned to Haverhill and he took up a normal life, sworn to secrecy by the Official Secrets Act. Unable to tell his parents, his brothers, or his sisters about what really happened to him over there. 50 years later, John was finally able to tell his story in his memoir. Oh, I forgot to get one, wait a minute. Code Burgundy. The Long Escape. John just happens to have a supply of them here, and will happily sell them for $25 a copy, and will happily personally autograph anyone who wishes to purchase one. On September 20, 2010, by decree of Nicolas Sarkozy, President of the French Republic, John Katsaros was named a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, France's highest award, which I do believe is the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor. The following year, the Consul General of France traveled to his hometown of Haverhill and personally presented the decoration to John. We are honored to have a true hero with us today, and thanks to modern technology, his remarks will not only be available for further distribution here in Lexington, but via the internet to any interested person anywhere in the world. So you will live on, John Katsaros. Please welcome John Katsaros.
Thank you. What gave you the right to make me a hero? The heroes are all my friends that passed away. In my case, 4 men in our crew got killed out of 10. Now, I don't need this microphone. Well, can you hear me back there? I'm sure you can. If you can't, let me know. I'll get the microphone, get it closer.
Use your voice.
Yeah. And if I can't hear, if you can't hear anything, my wife will let me know. Everybody calls me a gunner, but they failed to mention the fact that I was an engineer on the plane. I could fly the B-17 at the age of 18, but I wouldn't be allowed to take it in combat because it cost $250,000, and they couldn't trust me to fly it. So every time I took it up, my pilot would say, "You should have been a fighter pilot, the way you fly this thing." Well, anyway, also, they called for any photographers. So they said, "Anybody have a photographer can take a picture?" "Sure," I said. I had a little baby brownie camera room, and I would take pictures. But you know what they gave me? They gave me 3 cameras. One was a K-20, another was a K-24, and a movie camera. And constantly we took pictures in combat, and you'll see a few of them today. That, as you can see, there was 10 men aboard, and I'm over here at 19 years old flying combat, 1943 to 1944 till we got shot down. The other men that are not living at that time, he was killed. We took him out of the Baltimore, this fellow here. Co-pilot, he was living. Pilot was living. Bombardier was living. Navigator, his parachute never opened up. And this fellow here was the tail gunner, badly wounded. And the engineer had his head blown off, believe it or not. And the radio man and I helped Walter Rush get out of the Baltimore, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Anyway, let's start with this, my picture. 1944, I had 42 graduated at Hale High School, and I enlisted 2 days after Pearl Harbor in the United States Navy Air Cadet program, and they threw me out after 6 months. They claimed I had a color perception problem. Well, a color perception problem, people say, "Well, you were colorblind." No, we were not colorblind. 7 out of 10 men have a color perception problem. Like 7 out of 10 men are bald-headed, and you can blame that on your mother's genes. Now, when we got thrown out of the Navy, okay. Okay. Now, what happened is that when you go to a doctor's office, ask him if he got an Ishihara test. And the Ishihara test, has anybody taken it? Well, there's a lot of dots in it. Maybe you fellows have. Have you? You colorblind? No, color perception? Huh? Could you pass the test? Well, anyway, there's a lot of dots in there, different colored dots. You turn the pages over, there's about 10 pages. And you're supposed to read the numbers in there. So I read 3 of them, all guessed. The other 7 I couldn't see. Out I went. Now, there's one story behind that. I never got a discharge from the Navy, and I'm going to sue the Navy for back pay. Any lawyers here want to take the case? Anyway, outside was waiting the U.S. Army Air Corps, because they wanted people that had color perception problems because they could see through camouflage. We could be flying 30,000 feet and we could see a German plane taking off in camouflage from his air base. And it's just unbelievable that we could do that. Can you do that? No? You failed. You failed the test. Anyway, so what happened after that, I became instead of a pilot, I volunteered to be a gunner. What a mistake. Now, if you look at this Collier's magazine, you'll see June 14th, 1941, Pearl Harbor was impregnable. If you ever saw a Life magazine, and I can't find one, I found this in the Boston library. I don't know if you have it here, but look at your library over here and see if they have a Life magazine about the same date with the same caption, except for one thing. In color, on the front page, is Battleship Row. All the battleships lined up in row, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and so forth. And we kids said to ourselves, what in the world are they doing, advertising for the Japanese to bomb us? And they did 7 months later. So I thought that was an interesting bypass. These are 27 men that I graduated from high school. We all joined either the U.S. Army or the Air Force. You see this fellow over there? He's the only one that made general. But I was a staff sergeant at that time. We were down in Miami Beach, and this man was the biggest flub up you ever wanted to meet, and that's who they made generals. He couldn't march at all his step, and he never answered roll call. And we were living in a house down in Miami. You know where the Fontainebleau is? That's where we had our B-7, the Air Force had number 9 training session right there. And whenever they called roll call, Illinois, you'd hear an answer from one of us. We covered for him. We kept covering for him for 3-4 days. About the 5th day, the captain came up to me and says, "Look, Sergeant, you better make sure these fellows don't call here when they call Illinois." So they called Illinois, no answer. Illinois, no answer. And all of a sudden, Illinois, he's up in the second story, in bed, coming out of bed, he yells out the window, "Here!" And that's the guy that became a general. But I'll tell you, Alan was a great guy. He and I broadcast football for Haverhill High School for 27 years. And he eventually had a radio station up in Barry, Vermont, and that's where he became an Air Force general in the Air National Guard. Yeah, too bad I lost Alan a couple of years ago. There's only 1 or 2 men living. Big problem is that we have an Air Force Escape and Evasion Society, both nationally and internationally, and I've been the president of it because I'm the youngest man. The oldest man is 106 years old, believe it. I'm 95, and I've carried him for 10 years, and the government still has not released us in writing, but because I had the unfortunate experience of climbing the Pyrenees Mountains a week after Chuck Yeager climbed out, and we ended up in the same prison, and he got out of the prison 2 days before we arrived there because, and we had no idea that an invasion, because we were climbing the Pyrenees Mountains when the invasion took place. So the doctor said, "Why don't you guys call the commander of the prison and we'll get out of here." I said, "How can we do that?" I said, "Well, the invasion, a lot of us said, the invasion." So the major called the prison commander, that's how we got out. And Chuck Yeager wrote a book that I had written quite a few pages to give to my grandchildren about what happened to me. But in the meantime, I couldn't say anything to my mother, the father. My mother, father, 2 brothers, a sister passed away. Never heard the story that you hear right now. That's how long I kept it secret. I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I recovered it on my own. And today I help a lot of people at the Lowell VA to recover from post-traumatic stress disorder. If you know anybody that has it, get in touch with me and I'll set them up so we can get them straight away. Now, my wife says she can't hear. Is that right? Can you hear back there? Mary, what's the matter? Hearing aids don't cost as much now. She doesn't want to wear hearing aids. And there's a hair over her ears.
I don't want to hear.
She says, I don't need them, I can hear. Well, anyway, this is my, I'm graduating as a gunner down in Fort Myers, Florida. And from there I went to North Carolina to engineering school in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And I graduated from there, and then we went to Denver, Colorado. From there, I ended up down in Texas, at Pyote, Texas. And when I arrived there, they assigned me to a group of 9 men that flew in B-17s, and that's our first phase of training, was at Pyote. There's my group, as you can see a bigger picture, and that's me right there. And that's the training plan that we had, Trigger the Third. And we had our first phase of training there, and everything went well, but they shipped us to Dalhart, Texas, and we're taking a second phase of training, and that was supposed to be how you fly in close formation over a target with your bomb in. Because the closer we flew, the better reaction we'll get from guns. In other words, we had 13 guns in the whole plane, but we couldn't shoot 13 guns at one time. So if somebody was coming through from my, say, a waist window, other people from other planes could also fire at the same time, and it wouldn't be one person in a singular fashion. So what had happened, they had a mission to Oschersleben, Germany, and 62 B-17s went down on that mission. There was 10 men in each one of those planes, and 620 men went down. And the planes that went back, 20% of them had so much collateral damage they could never fly again. There was many, many dead people aboard those planes. A couple of days later, we had another mission at a ball bearing factory, and I have a picture of that mission. I never was on it, thank God, because we lost another 60 planes. So there's 120 some odd planes went down, and that devastated the whole 8th Air Force. The British were trying to get us to join the RAF, and our generals didn't want to do that because we were flying daylight missions, and that's what the B-17 was built to do, fly missions in the daylight in formation, and not like the British did. They'd fly at nighttime, one behind the other. So we kept fighting with them, and until they personally lost 90 Lancasters, which was a big, big bomber, bigger than anything we had. And when they lost 90 bombers, we had the excuse not to join it. So we continued to fly, but what had happened, they took us out of our second phase training. They shipped us down to Nebraska. We picked up 2 new B-17s. They were supposed to fly them back to England because they needed airplanes and they needed crews. So they split our crews in half. And we went down in one plane. I was an engineer in one plane, and started flying from Nebraska to Detroit. From Detroit, we were going to go to Presque Isle, Maine, and I called the pilot up about a half an hour before we were ready to go there, and so we got an engine problem. Number 2 engine is leaking oil. You better land at Burgundy Air Base in Manchester, New Hampshire. So he says, why Manchester, New Hampshire? I said, because I live 30 miles away, I want to go home. he did, he landed there, and I went AWOL that night. Next morning, I couldn't get it back on the base. The killer came by, he says, I have a right to put you in jail. I said, go ahead, you can take my place. You know, you could live maybe another five missions, I don't know. Anyway, so with that, somehow I taught my way out of it. And we took off, and the pilot was good enough to bus Haverhill. And Haverhill had never seen a B-17 before. But I told my folks, get the crew around, fly right over the house, and you'll see it. And that's what we did. So we ended up in Gander, Newfoundland. It was a cold air. Whew. Anyway, we stayed in Gander for a couple of days, and the day we were going to take off, we had 16 planes that were supposed to fly that day. The first plane that took off blew up. Now, do you people ever hear of Lord Ha-Ha? Yeah. You heard of Tokyo Rose? Well, we in England would listen to Lord Ha-Ha every night. And he knew what was going to happen the very next day, and he would advertise it. And we'd have to change our plans. But he called up that night, he says, so-and-so, the pilot that was flying that plane, sorry that we had to blow it up, and we're going to blow up the next 15. They come out, and he related every pilot that was flying in those 15 planes. So we had to shut down and have a stand down, check the planes over. We couldn't find anything wrong with them. And the next day we took off, and can you imagine taking off, wondering whether or not the plane was going to blow up? Well, 15 planes made it all the way to Scotland. Anyway, when we got to England, I was assigned to an air base in Deanthorpe, England. But as we flew over to England, I wanted to show you how we flew in combat, but that's not the way we flew over in England. We flew maybe 15 minutes apart, 16 planes, 15 minutes apart. It was a great, great trip. I'll never forget it. I hated to take a boat over. I was happy to fly over, and it was a good experience. And when we get to the base, this is what we were assigned. For cold weather gear, this is what you had. But the temperatures were going down 45 below zero. And when you get down to 45 below zero, we say, geez, that's getting warm. Because sometimes it was 60 and 70 below zero. And we were flying with open windows. Wind blowing 150 miles an hour. You have to be a 19-year-old crazy kid to fly and do this. But we had to do it to give you the freedom you have today. And we want to save that freedom. It's up to you to talk to your kids and your grandchildren and let them know what's going on today. And that's what I do. I've given 359 talks, and this is my 360th. And most of them are to kids. Middle schools, high schools, private schools, colleges, BU. I never got to Harvard, how come? Neither did I get the Tufts, but I got it in Lowell, Mass. And anyway, but when you get down to 60, 70 below zero, you couldn't wear that uniform. And we were freezing because on top of that uniform, as you can see, we had a Mae West, and we had gears. We had all these straps so we could put our parachutes on. And it was very difficult to move around with 10 men dressed up like that. And just to go through the bomb bay door, you'd have to take their jacket off and walk over it without a parachute. So they decided to give us electric heated suits, just like an electric blanket, electric heated shoes, electric heated gloves, and that's the way we flew at 60 below weather. And first mission I was on, I had a big mistake. I checked the plane over. That was my job, to check the plane as an engineer. I checked everything in the plane, and finally I had to load up the gas and so forth. everything went well. But stupid me, I never checked how the armor put my gun on the adapter. So when we went over the English Channel, you used to shoot 2 or 3 bursts just to warm up the guns. And a gun came right back at me, threw me on the ground, and it's pointed right at the tail gunner. Somehow I got the safety on, stopped it. And pilot calls up and says, "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing's going on. We have to check these guns, that's about it." He put the adapter on wrong. The screw came this way instead of that way. It's supposed to be against you. I learned my lesson. Checked it out. From that day on, I put my own gun on. Things were so bad over in England, they allowed us to take our jackets and paint them like that. And the noses of our plane were always painted, usually with a pretty girl. And on my first mission, this officer came by and he says, "Do you want an absolution, John?" I said, "Well, you're the Greek Orthodox priest?" He said, "No, I'm Catholic." I said, "Where's the Greek Orthodox priest?" "I'm Greek Orthodox." He says, "The Air Force doesn't have, the Army doesn't even have a Greek Orthodox priest. You either have to pick a Catholic, Protestant, or a rabbi." So I guess I'll be a Catholic the rest of the war. That's what happened. And there's a sequel to that story. He still owes me money. He was a lousy card player, but 60 years later, I found out he came from Haverhill, Massachusetts, my hometown. He didn't know that I came from here. I didn't know he did. And his family still lives there. Hell of a nice guy. So, but when I needed help, it was always in the Greek Orthodox religion. But whether you're Greek Orthodox or not, whatever religion you got, when you're in combat, ladies, and you're not even, if you don't think you have any faith, that's where you get the faith. I'll tell you, you pray to get all the help you get. This is a position I was flying in the first mission because they had another engineer and they wanted me to take pictures, so I was taking a lot of pictures out of that window. And a Fokker 490 came by me and he had tried to shoot down our plane, and this is what it looked like. Came by, didn't even take a shot at me. I opened up and fired at him, and I got the whole tail. That whole tail just blew up. I called the tail gunner. I said, "Check that plane out, see if the pilot got out." He said, "The plane's on fire, it's going down," but the pilot did bail out, and I was happy that it happened. I shot another plane down on the 20th of March, 1944, and I was happy when I killed the pilot, because he's the one that killed my tail gunner. I'll tell you about that later. On that same mission, the tail gunner ran out of auction. He was thrashing around like this, shooting his twin guns, and his mask came off. So when we called for auction check, because we checked for everybody for auction, because over 10,000 feet, there's no auction up there, and they're flying 35,000 feet. So he never answered. So pilot says, "John, go back and check them out." So now you have to crawl back and go check them, but you take a 10-minute walk around bottle, clip it on with auction, and walk back to help him out. So he was unconscious when I got there. I gave him artificial respiration. He came to, but he kept fighting me. He's a big guy. And we were sucking up all the oxygen out of the back of the plane. So I called the pilot. I said, we need a little help here because we're running out of oxygen. So he sent a navigator back there with walk-around bottles. But by this time, here we are. We bombed the target. We're on our way back to England. And you're up at 30-some-odd thousand feet, and you have no oxygen in the back part of the plane. So now you've got a radio man, ball turret operator, tail gunner, and 2 waist gunners. 5 5 people in, and we were running out of oxygen. So what do you have to do? We went through this catwalk with walk-around bottles to the front part of the plane, filled them up, and brought it back to the people in the back. We did that 6 times across that narrow passageway without a parachute. How could I ever get up there 30,000 feet looking down without a parachute? But when you're 19 years old, you can do this. You know, it's amazing. And that's how we brought, that's how we helped one another. Okay, now that mission was over, but when we got down to debriefing, I never mentioned anything about the airplane that we shot down. And for some reason or other, here you are, you're flying a mission, you're fighting a war, and you're up there 12 hours fighting, and all of a sudden you're back in England, and everything's quiet. No war going on. So they said, gee, you just can't fathom this thing. So finally what they did is they started giving you a double shot of scotch. So I was lucky because my radio operator didn't drink. I had those 2 double shots of scotch, and I never stopped talking, as you can see. Right? So anyway, they found out I had the tail gunner approve my kill, and that was the end of that one. That mission was over. So these are the type of cameras I had. That's not me with taking pictures, but one camera, the K-20, you could take a still picture, and the K-24 would be a picture as the plane bombs landed. It would take a picture of the target. And we'd get back to England, and the intelligence people would take the film and would examine and find out what percentage of damage we did to the target. I like the camera, best of all. Now here's Schweinfurt. This is the second mission they had back in October 1943 loss, and they lost 60 B-17s. 40% of them were shot down by ACAC. Every one of these little black marks was an 88 millimeter bomb this high. And the Germans would fly about 1,000 feet away from you, and they would radio down to the gunners, and they'd say they're traveling at 192 miles an hour, and they're up at 32,500 feet. And the gunners, including female gunners, were very good. They would arrange the bomb to get up there at that altitude, and they would shoot. Sometimes they'd have 15,000 guns on the ground, and they'd be shooting. That's what they did. That's what they did in Schweinfurt. And you can see the way it was. They'd shoot it in a block formation like that, and you'd have to go right through it. Because once you get to the 10 minutes before they call that the initial point of attack, and you'd have to fly straight into the target, and you couldn't deviate it. And do you know who used to fly the plane during the bomb run? Does anybody know?
Bombardier.
Who said that?
Bombardier.
You win the prize. That's what it did. It used to turn, the pilot would say, okay, Bomber, you take over. And through his what? How could he do it? Does anybody know how he could do it?
The northern bomb site.
The northern bomb site. He could actually fly the plane with a northern bomb site, and he couldn't deviate more than 1 degree to the left or 1 degree to the right. And he'd fly right into the target, drop the bomb, say bombs away, and then the pilot would take the plane over and try to scoot back to England. That was amazing how that was done. One day, when you could see the change, they finally changed the planes. We used to fight with the officers. I said, why in the world are you painting the gray or brown on your planes? You know, a gallon of paint is very hard to pick up. Can you imagine how many gallons of paint around that plane? Why don't you leave them alone, let them be silver. We needed more ammunition. We needed more fuel and more oxygen. So finally, they stopped doing it. So I didn't have the fortune of flying any planes with it. But this fellow here that flew a left waist position, he kept pestering me to take a picture of his plane when they were dropping the bombs. So that I did that. And what had happened, 15 seconds later, an 88 millimeter hit the middle of that plane and it just blew right up. I lost 10 men. What a shame that was. See that ball turret up there? One day they said, John, get in the ball turret. Take pictures out of the ball turret. The ball turret, I was 160 pounds and I'm 6 foot tall. And you get in the ball turret, you'd be down like this for 7, 8 hours. How in the world could you take pictures out of there? There's no possibility. Oh, geez, anyway. When we finally bombed the target on our way back, I said to the pilot, you know, I'm freezing to death here. Somebody over here shook my hands today, and she was a tiny woman, and she nearly broke my fingers. My fingers are frozen from 1941 and to now. So, where is she? She's around here? Oh, no, she probably left. Anyway, so I said to the pilot, you better get me out of here. I'm freezing. My face is frozen, my toes are frozen, my hands are frozen. He says, give me 15 more minutes, and I'll have you over the England Channel. You get out there. So I said, do me a favor. Call the base up. Have an ambulance waiting for me. And sure enough, the very next day, here we are, myself and my friend. We're both in the 401st Bomb Group. That was a hospital. And listen, there, right there, that's him. I was in there 2 days, the third day, back flying again. This is a picture I took over Berlin. The first day that Berlin was bombed. You can see the date up there. The date is right there, March 9. And we lost 50 B-17s over Berlin. But that's picture is I took that and our bombs landed, and they put it in the Stars and Stripes. And you can see that bomb run was a perfect bomber. We hit a wall ball bearing factory, and it was hit about 99% destroyed. You can see 90% of the bombs were landed right on that target. So anyway, most of the times we were lucky to bomb and hit the target maybe 70, 75% of the time.
John,
Yeah.
make that larger?
What's that?
You make the picture larger?
You want it larger? I'm going to try to do that now. Maybe we get the expert here. Can you get it larger? I'm not going to talk to you about every mission, but I'm going to give you the date that we get shot down and tell you what happened. I think that's the most important one that you'd like to know about. And that was on March 20th, 1944. And we were going to bomb a target in Frankfurt, Germany. And my first edition book, I lied as to what the target was. I couldn't release the information at that time. But this last book that I wrote, it had to do with engines that they were manufacturing for a HO-2 stealth bomber. They could fly through radar, could fly at 60,000 feet, could fly from Berlin to New York and back again without refueling, with 2 men on it, with a bomb on it, an atomic bomb on it. And the Germans had the bomb before we did. But because we kept bombing their facilities and their engineers, they got to the point where they couldn't manufacture it fast enough. So we beat them to it. But it's amazing how much damage we did to them over a period of, say, February to March, especially through Big Week in the month of February, where we flew 3 major missions that practically destroyed all the German Air Force at that time. What's happened?
Not sure what you did.
Okay. Anyway, I'll get to the next one.
You're getting close to Harvard there. Great.
On March 20th, we were flying over Frankfurt, as I said. What's that?
You can go there.
Okay. Okay, so when we get to Frankfurt, actually we were bombing at the engine factory, but the weather was so bad that we couldn't keep a close formation. And this plane above us came down and almost hit us. And we went into a dive and came out of the dive. I don't know how the pilot ever did it, but he did. But when we got back up to bombing altitude, we couldn't find another plane in sight. So we went into the target, and we were the only ones that went over the target and bombed it that day. So if you read a report from the 8th Air Force on 20th of March 1944, it says the Air Force, 8th Air Force bombed the target and damaged it 92%, but they lied. There was only one plane over there. How could the 8th Air Force bomb that target? But, you know, this happens during a war, you know. Okay, so on the way back, on the way to the Frankfurt, all alone we lost 2 engines. On the way back, we were being attacked by ME-109s like that, 6 at a time. And they kept continuous attacks from Frankfurt, and we were trying to get into France because we hated to bail out over Germany. Because if you bail out over Germany, if you landed in a field, a farmer would pitchfork you to death. If you landed near SS or Gestapo, they would shoot you, and you'd be lucky if you landed near an air base with a Luftwaffe there, and they would have protected us. But we figured if we could land in France, there's a possibility the French resistance could help us. So we got over into France, and boy, we were getting peppered pretty badly. And we ran, the gunners that had ammunition that were still alive, ran out of ammunition. And what had happened, I looked back at the tail gun position. My tail gun was bent over. I went over back to help him out, and he died in my arms. But this fella just turned around, and he apparently was the guy that shot him down. Thought that he had killed the pilot and nobody else was there. He never figured there would be another gunner now. But I looked at the guns and he had ammunition in him. And he came straight at me. As he was coming straight at me, never shot. I opened fire and I emptied all the gun at him. Just blew him right out of the sky. That's why I said it didn't bother me that I killed that one man. That's war. You have war, you fight the war, you're up in that air, it's kill or be killed. And if you hit the ground and you meet up with the Luftwaffe, then they might be able to save you. Anyway, that's what we go through all the time. Anyway, what had happened is that we got over Reims, and by that time, I went back to my gun position, and I got shot up pretty badly, and everybody in the plane was shot up pretty badly. As I told you before, 4 men were killed, and the 6 men that were still in that plane, everybody was injured badly. The left waist gunner was hit in the neck, and he was bleeding. I put my scarf around his neck. I thought I was going to stop the bleeding. It was so cold, the blood congealed into a ball like this in seconds. And we put his parachute on him, threw him out of the plane, but he only lived 2 days in the hospital. And again, we're getting ready to bail out of the plane, and what happened, we looked down at the ball turret operator, and he couldn't get out of the ball turret. What had happened, there was thousands of empty shells on the floor of the plane, and they were rolling up into his gearbox. There was a huge gearbox that he needed to turn around the plane, And when they got into the gears, you'd have to go pull them out. So the radio man and I went back and we pulled him out one at a time. We finally got him out. And he got so excited, he picked up his parachute. We always had the parachute laying on the bottom of the plane. You couldn't have it. You couldn't have it you couldn't fight with it. It's too heavy. And when he did that, he picked up the plane. He picked up the parachute by the D-ring, and it blasted out right. Jeez, right. What more could happen to that kid? So he gathered it in his arm, and we told him, don't open up your arms, whatever you do, because there's no oxygen up yet. Now we're at 27,500 feet. So he jumps out, and he's the only guy that jumped out and still lived up until about a year ago. But what happened to him, he was unconscious all the way down. What had happened when he went unconscious, his arms opened up, of course, and that's when the parachute opened up. And when he came down, he hit the parachute hit a high tension wire. And he got impregnated in a picket fence right in the stomach. And he couldn't move. The Germans picked him up. And they had him in hospital for 57 days to save his life. And they did. But they never had a German doctor working on him. It was a Russian prison doctor that did it. Anyway, he was sent to Stalag 17, and the book that was written by Ben Felfer, Stalag 17, which is actually called Kriege's Memoirs, meaning Kriege, the German word for prisoner. Memoirs is what he wrote about. And he wrote that book, and he had just a little small book, and he only printed 4 of them. Walter had one of them. And he lived in Maine, and only lived 2 years and passed away. Anyway, when we got over a place called the Bon Maison Farm, we didn't realize how lucky we were that we bailed out at 27,500 feet. And the only way we could bail out was that I had my right arm was shot, and the radio man's right arm was shot, and we couldn't put our parachutes on. You need 2 hands to put them up. So I'd be clipping his on, and he clipped mine on, and we bailed out. And this is when you say the Greek prayer. Right? Because if you see a B-17, you see a little door, just a small little door in the back of the plane, and you open up the door goes out. Now you have to go down your hands and knees and just fall out. Because if you stand up, you get hit by the rear of the plane, you're gone. And so what happens, you fall asleep, you take the free fall. You have to have a lot of guts to not open up the parachute. If you do, you're going to die anyway. So take the free fall, you pass out. You're lucky enough you come to. When you come to, now you say another prayer. How are you going to get that parachute open if you can't raise your right arm and the D-ring is over here? You have to bring the left arm over because the chest back is here. I was lucky when I went to get my parachute. You never had a parachute of your own because after every mission, they would take it, they rip it apart to see if there's any empty shells in it, or it was ripped or anything like that, and then restore it again. And they'd give you. So they said to me, "What kind of a parachute you want?" I said, "How many are they?" There's an American parachute and a British parachute. And I said, "What's the difference?" Well, we find a lot of people are bailing out and they're injured. And they're having trouble once they get down on the ground to unclick the 3 clicks that you have to get out of the harness. So if you take a British parachute, it has a round ball and 4 straps will go into that round ball. All you have to do is turn it to the right position, bang it, and it collapsed. Well, when I hit the ground, I had broken 6 ribs when I pulled a parachute. Broke an arm, split my head open. I didn't think I'd ever make it. And laying on the ground like that, at least I wasn't being dragged across we landed on the WWII Air Base, right on the runway. And the radio man had an American parachute. And we were coming down together, and I saw him open up his parachute. It was after I did. And he hit the ground hard, broke his leg. But the wind blew the parachute. He couldn't get out of it. It got him right up against a tree, and she smashed him up pretty badly. That's how he stopped. So he was a prisoner for a long time. I was a prisoner in that farmhouse. In 5 minutes, a plane, that ME-109 that I showed you before, I could actually see the pilot of that plane come around a circle 3 times to give my position away. And each time he came by, he saluted me. I saluted back. At first I thought he might shoot me, but he didn't. And gave my position away to the Gestapo. They picked me up, put me in a farmhouse, and I was in there for several days. They questioned me, not only give them name, rank, serial number, and my arm, which was shot, I was shot in the back, in the leg, and the arm. But the arm was the worst, and it was getting gangrene. And a German doctor wanted to amputate it. I wouldn't let them do it, so they left me there for dead, but they had 2 guards over me, and I gave myself the last rites. That afternoon, 3 men walked in with guns, and one came up to me like that and put his finger to his mouth. It was the French resistance. They were in the back room, pop, pop, they killed the 2 guards, picked me up, put me in the car, and drove me down to right behind Reims Cathedral's clinic, which is still there. The clinic is still there. And there was a fellow, Jewish fellow. He was Jewish and French, and he was hiding in his own clinic. And he came up and operated on me that day, and ran out of ether. So he operated that afternoon, ran out of ether again. Now he gets to the point where he tells the resistance, I'm gonna have to take his arm off. And they pull a gun and put it to his head. I said, come on, what are you trying to do? This guy's trying to save my life, and you guys, oh, Jesus, crazy. Anyway, they went out and stole enough meat at the local hospital, came back the next day, and in 26 hours, that doctor came out of that cellar where he was hiding with a Star David on him, and operated on me 3 times. And when I woke up, I looked at my arm, the cast was on my arm. So that's how I survived. And that, if you go back to the place where we landed, you'll see this this fellow that by the name of Georges Ganymede was a World War I ace for the French escadrille, and he had shot down 53 German planes, and he was one of the top their top pilot. He got killed 2 days before this. It was the 15th of July, 1917, that he got killed. Now this is the landing area. When I went back to check that area out where we landed, there's a fellow's a son of a French resistance worker that researched where we landed and what happened to all of us, and he took a picture, and I blew it up, and the I forget now. The pilot, the co-pilot landed here, and then Bill Mark, the navigator, he got killed in this area. His parachute opened up, and this is Ted Kroll, our bombardier. He was one that never got captured. He was saved by the French resistance, and he lived in the forest until the end of the war, and he was repatriated by General Doolittle, not Doolittle, but yeah, who's the famous World War II? Patton, yeah. Anyway, and that's me where I get captured. And what happened to Mastronati, he was pulled across there, and he got picked up by the Germans right away. And Walter Russian, the ball turret operator, he was captured, put in the hospital, and Crowley, the guy that I threw out of the window, out of the door, after I saved his life, and he was a left-face gunner. He didn't live long. He died several days later. So, what happened after that? These are the fellows that came and saved me. This fellow over here is Pierre Demaché. I went back to see these people about 20 times to research the story. It took me 20 years to write the book, 3 years to edit it. And he's the one that came up and put his finger to his mouth. And I'm back there to visit. And this is where the Gestapo had me laid out for 4 or 5 days. And the other two fellows here, this guy up here, Jean Joly, he was head of the resistance movement in Reims, and that was his assistant. And when I went back to visit him years ago, she was the owner of the farm. Henry was the guy that put me in a wheelbarrow and brought me to that farm. And there's Pierre Demaché right there. These two fellows had passed away by that time. Jean Joly eventually became the #1 French resistance worker in the French army. You know, the French got a bad name, and I wrote the book to honor the French resistance, and all the proceeds are going to the children of the people that worked there for me. And I had hundreds and hundreds of French resistance workers that helped me, and they helped thousands of people like me. And people don't realize it in this country, so they better realize it. And it get to the point where, when I wrote the book, I go back to France and I talk to the kids and say, how come you never asked me about what your father or your grandfather did? And they didn't know. I said, how come you don't know? They didn't say anything to us. I said, but you got my book. Yeah, but we can't read the book. So I fixed it. I translated it into French. So anybody here is French, you want a book, I have your French for you. Okay? Now, what happened after my operation, I was so thirsty. I hadn't had anything to eat or drink for over 5 or 6 days. And I rang the bell to get some water. And what happened, the nurse ran upstairs. She said, "Vive d'aller." Thank God I took a little French in high school. I understood what she was saying. She said, "You better get out of here fast." And what she was saying is that lady that answered my ring was part of the Gestapo, and she was calling the Gestapo that somebody's up in that room, and nobody's supposed to be in a room. So they dressed me in a coverall like this. It was all shot up and all bloody. Put me out in the street, rolled off into a gutter, and all the German soldiers are coming by looking at me. They must have thought I was a drunk. They just kept going. And after about 15 minutes, a couple came by and picked me up, and they took me to this place. And they shoved me up the stairway was right here to the 2nd or 3rd floor. Now, imagine what I went through in those 5 days. Not only getting shot up and everything that happened up there, operations and so forth, I'm thrown out in the street, and all of a sudden they got me walking around and pushing me up the stairs and put me into a jail upstairs, but they had a bed in there. So that's why they learned that when you get hurt, it's better to keep people walking around. It happened because the people that walked had to move around to escape and do things like that. So they've taken upon themselves as doctors to do this. And I was in there for a day or two, and somebody walked in dressed up in a cavalry outfit, and he threatened me. He says, "You got to tell me everything about you, because we don't believe you and this and that." Oh my God, and tomorrow we're going to shoot you because you don't want to tell us anything. But what had happened, this female walked in. Her name was Madame Ramoget, and I had met this woman during my original escape. She came by and spoke to me because she could speak perfect English. She was a school teacher, And she said, John, I know your whole story, but you got to tell them something, because tomorrow they'll shoot you. You can't trust these people. So I gave them some information, just enough that anybody else would have known, and they checked it out. And the next morning, I wake up, and I see my 3 men that helped me out. Mrs. Ramachay must have notified them. They came in, had a big fight, and they found out it was a rogue French resistance group that was not supposed to be operating in that area. And they had the big fight, and they got rid of them, and they took me, and Pierre took me to his house, and he was a baker, and he had chickens and so forth, and I ate and ate and ate, because they had the best bread in France. And after France, he had the biggest bakery in France. He supplied everything, airplanes, cruise ships, so forth. He's since passed away, and his son inherited it, and the grandson took it over and decided it's about time to sell it, so they sold it. But every day we'd be there, we'd visit. You know, next thing you know, every morning you'd see the bread on the knob, and we take the rest of the bread, and we're eating that as well. They said, well, why you eat that bread? It's a day old. You're not supposed to eat that. You're supposed to eat the fresh bread. Well, bread is so good. Oh, give it to the birds. And she could cook. But what happened, the Germans found out that I was working with the French resistance. And then I started working with the British intelligence. And what had happened, Churchill has set up an organization called SOE, Special Operations Executive. And he wanted to get his pilots back during the Battle of Britain, when they were fighting in the air. That's all. The Battle of Britain was only a war in the air between the RAF and the German Luftwaffe. And actually, the RAF won that war. That's why the Germans took off and attacked Russia instead of Germany. Big mistake he made. Anyway, so I could go on and on, but I don't know how much time I have. Huh? I'm going to have to cut it. All right, anyway, I escaped the second time, but they captured a lady in the house, and they tortured her and kept her in prison for about 1.5 years, and she was able to live. And when I saw her after the war, I went up to her and said, Genevieve, I said, would tell me one thing. Would you do the same thing now that you did back then to give us freedom and so forth? She says, to give France some freedom, I'd do it all over again. And this woman had her fingernails pulled out by the Germans. That's how bad it was. But she lucked out. And anyway, they finally had to get rid of me. And my father, here's get my missing in action report. My sister's writing a letter as well as the Havel Gazette. They got a report and I'm missing over Germany. This is my sister's writing all the time. And the answer was going back, missing in action. And she kept telling me to have faith. Good luck, John. May God be with you and all that. And the Havel Gazette in that area, they put down the names of people who were deceased as prisoners of war. They had my name listed, but I fooled them. I'm still here. And so now what I wanted to do, this is the way I looked when I had my cast in my arm. And I would work with the French resistance as a lookout. And I'd have a Sten gun in my right arm and a flashlight. And if the Germans were anywhere around while the planes were dropping supplies over, and if they landed, this is one way Churchill would get his men back. The plane would land and you'd have to run and jump on that plane to fly you back. But I was important enough. So the second method was through a gunboat. They would take a gunboat, bring it over to France, and they'd take up to 27 people on a gunboat, bring them back. I had one friend that was brought back that way. And the third method was climbing the Pyrenees Mountains, which is the toughest thing to do. Anyway, when we got out of Reims, I went down to Epernay, and then from Epernay I went down to Paris. When I got to Paris, they took my German ID card that they gave me in Reims, and they gave me another one. They brought me to a German woman that forged another ID card, and she took this picture of me. And she brought me in the back part of the room, and she was talking to me about the Holocaust. So she mentioned everything about the Holocaust. She knew every commander, German commander's names, or addresses, you name it. And she filled me up with all this information. But at the end, she said to me, when you get back to England, would you please tell the Air Force, American Air Force and British Air Force, to bomb all these targets? I said, you're telling me to kill your own people? I can't do that. She said, yeah, they're dead already, but they won't be able to bring any more Germans and any Jews in there. So, because when I got back to England, the invasion took place, and I told them what happened. I had to give them all that information, and they contacted Eisenhower, our air base. They contacted Churchill. They contacted Roosevelt, and decided to switch, instead of going the way they were planning to go to Berlin. They switched it so they could relieve the people in those. You saw the people, pictures of nothing but bones. Those people, was terrible. Anyway, so they never bombed them. Now, my last day in Reims, I stayed at this gentleman's house, and he's the guy that tried to get me to fly back with a German pilot. The German pilot was a colonel, and he was flying for 7 years or more. And this fellow here, Gerard Gavin, was his birthday that day. He said, come on, we're going to go downstairs in my barn. We're going to have a champagne and celebrate. And that's when the German colonel walked in and sat down with us. And he's trying to get him to fly me back to England. The German colonel says, I'll think about it. And the reason he did it, he said, is because he and Hitler were at odds with one another. And he had to find an obsolete plane, which was a two-seater, and he could have put me in his two-seater and fly me back. But he wanted to fly a 262 jet fighter. How many 262 fighter planes did the Germans have? There were. Anybody know? They had 1,200 of them. How many did the Allies have? I don't know. Anybody know? None. None. They were fast. Those planes were jet planes. They could fly through radar. They could attack us quickly. They could go 600 miles an hour. And if you're going 150 and they're going 600, that's 750 miles an hour to 800 miles an hour. And you couldn't shoot them down. But American fighter planes, the P-51s, would learn to shoot them as they were taking off the air bases and when they were landing. That's about the only way they could do it. Or if they were attacking the bombers, they'd be up 10,000 feet above them, come screaming down at them, and come down at a rate of speed that they shouldn't be coming down, because a P-51 should only go 475 miles an hour in a dive. And they shoot the German planes down that way. But when they got to the point that to build his the Gavin family, that's when they buried him, because he got killed cutting wires. Germans caught him. This woman here was a baby when I was visiting them at that time. Today she was the mayor of that town. And this is the type of plane that the German colonel was flying. It was a ME-110 fighter plane. When I got into Paris, That's the way I walked around Paris. Looked pretty good, huh? Well, I'll tell you, it worked. I could go right through all the Germans down in Champs-Élysées. We'd walk right through there and have coffee and so forth, and Germans were sitting right next to you. It was a lark. People said, "Well, you're scared?" I said, "I was having fun." I looked pretty good there. Anyway, after a few days, I had to leave, and where did I go? I went down to, went from Reims to Paris, to Toulouse, to Saint Jean, and when we got there, we was wondering, what the heck are we doing now? Because we were supposed to go in the western part of France to climb the mountain the way Chuck Yeager did. And they got us on this side, and we had no idea what we were doing there. And we were waiting for a Basque guy to take us across the mountain. And we waited a day and a half. He never showed up. So we decided to take it upon ourselves to go over. And luckily we didn't, because it took 4 days to find nights with a guide. We never would have made it. When we got into Spain, we were all under 90 pounds. We were filthy as you can be. And when we got out of prison, we went down to Saragossa, and they had to louse us and everything else, and give us some new clothes, and got down to Madrid. We had dinner with the ambassador, American ambassador had just come in, and the next day he put us on a train. We went down to Gibraltar. We flew back to England with the British. I just want to show you something quickly, and then we'll go into questions. When we got back, when I got into Gibraltar, we flew back in a plane like this to Bristol, England. When I got to England, and the intelligence side asked, who was Code Burgundy? That was my code name the British had given me. That's why the book is called Code Burgundy. And when I stood up, I was 20 years old, and the others were 27, 28, 26 pilots. And they didn't believe me, so they put me in a private room and started questioning me. In the meantime, the place that we climbed, they changed the name from Burgundy to the French Freedom Trail, and it was the most difficult and the severe climb to make it. They try to do it every year in June and July, and they never can make it over. How did we make it over? Live or die, right? This is the fellow that had to come down from our base to identify me, and these are the confidential reports that he had to sign to get me out. And this is a secret document which still hasn't been released in writing. Even verbally, they haven't released me. They only know me by the number. And I lied here with this cable that I sent from London. I said, "Dear folks, I'm safe. Cable answer to APO 999, the best of health." Well, I should have put it as worst of health. Anyway, that arrived 2 days after I got home. I said that June 16th, I got home on the 6th of July, my birthday. And the 8th of July, we got the telegram. Oh, my. That's how good they were. And the Herald Gazette got the story. And this is, when I went to I wasn't going to get discharged. I had to go before 7 doctors in Boston. And I was going to go to West Point. I had to pick to go there. So when I got there, they said, "You couldn't take the rigors of West Point." I said, "You kidding? West Point would be a piece of cake to me." But I couldn't tell them what happened, you know? So they reached down and they gave me my discharge. And if you look at the discharge, see what it says over here? Physical condition when discharged. What does it say? Poor. I had to go to my own doctor, get shrapnel out of me and anything else. Amazing. They can't do that today, can they? So I said, I'd like to stay in the service. They said, no, you can't stay in the service. We don't want you. But they gave me the best news of the day, the GI Bill of Rights. And I was the first kid to go through BU on the GI Bill of Rights. I loved it. And I had reunions, and I went to reunions to see my friends many, many times. And these are the medals they gave me so I can save them. And this is the only person that's living. She was my guide in Paris. And she was a beautiful looking woman. She was 21 years old at the time, and I was 20. Now she's 96. That's her husband. He's 99, sharp as can be. These are letters that people sent me. This is very important because this fellow right here was my bombardier, and this fellow here was a Greek fellow going to medical school with this lady over here. This lady is Bertrand Alvear, and she would have been the Queen of France if they had royalty. But she hid my bombardier and these other two fellows. And they were rescued by Patton. But she went to medical school, and she became an eye surgeon. I get a lot of reports from friends of mine that get them from Germany and so forth. I get more reports from Germany than I do out of American intelligence. You can see what it says here in this one. Katsaros, he's at large. And there's another one here. The best of the rest of the crew probably escaped today, search without fail. John Katsaros was last seen in the aircraft, was wounded and escaped. And this is my lovely wife, Mary, myself, and this is the fellow that built my plane. They looked exactly alike, my B-17, that we don't have anymore. The man of war, they called it. But this is what I want to show you. Some of Hitler's secret weapons. Now, you knew the Me-262 jet fighter, they had 1,200 of them, I told you. So we couldn't compete against them. Even the P-51 couldn't compete against them. And this is the buzz bomb. I went through 2 weeks of bombings in London with that buzz bomb. And I'd watch a Spitfire like this. He would go underneath the plane. This is unmanned, by the way. And that thing was a whole bomb. And the engine was this. And it would sound like a lawnmower. Pop, 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 pop. And you could see it flying. And all of a sudden, if it stopped doing the putt, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'd say we're alive. Because if it landed, if you counted up to 2, it would be right next to you. But the British Spitfires would go underneath it from the English Channel, and they'd flip over, hundreds of them. And they would do that over England too. You can see the one over here. He's got this wingtip right underneath it, and many, many Spitfire pilots got killed by shooting them down. Then the V-2 came out, and they killed 15,000 people. And a lot of people don't realize it, that the Germans shot over 1,000 were fired at London during the war, and some 4,000 were launched against Allied soldiers on the ground. 15,000 people killed, 20,000 sailors died building them. And we got Von Braun to come in and run our program to the moon. Then we found out, does anybody know what that is? Okay, what is it?
Part 229 or 227?
Pretty close. You're right, pretty close. And why was it named Horton?
That was the designer.
Huh? They're the ones that designed it, yeah.
Two brothers.
It was Horton too, because there were two brothers. Here's the brothers right here. See, I get a lot of this stuff from Germany. How do we get it from English? I blew the whistle in this thing when I printed this last book. There's only about 40 of them left now. And that's when they first gave all that information out, that this was a bomber that could fly, as I told you earlier, from Berlin to New York and back again without refueling, and they could carry an atomic bomb. And they could have hit New York. And just amazing that we beat them, and they had all this stuff. We got a hold of the pictures and the designs and so forth. Here you can see the German symbol here, and we get the designs, and we built it. And we got 2 of them built. One's in Washington, the other one is in California. And if you look at these 2 planes, the bottom is our B-1 bomber, and it resembles their bomb. They had it in 1944, and we had it about 10 years ago. And that bomber that we had has been in combat for 10 years, and not one single bullet ever hit it. I have a friend that used to fly that, and what happened, something happened to the plane, and you know, it flies low level, and like 1,200 feet off the ground. And when you see it going by, it's gone. so what had happened is that you know, having some kind of a problem on it. So he gave it the gas as much as he could. He got up high enough to bail out, and when he bailed out, he ripped his leg apart. The other fellow almost got killed. He's not flying anymore, but he was one of 2 men that ever bailed out a B-1 bomb out with that and lived. That was good. Here's the B-2 bomber that we built. Northrop built it. Look at how many bombs they could drop. 2,400 pounds, 16, 80. They could drop up to 80 500-pound bombs. We used to have about 8 to 10 500-pound bombs. And this plane could fly with 80 of them. My book starts with cherish your freedom, and it ends that way. Do you have any questions at all? Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you for giving all of these talks
Just
to,
a moment.
oh, sorry, yeah, to school children.
We're going to ask you to speak into the mic, please.
I will.
And Fresh, will you take a mic and
I want to thank you for taking your talk to so many school children. When we lived in a small village in France, there was a man who was in the French resistance. He was taken for slave labor in Germany, and he came back, and he did the same as you do, talking to school groups and anyone about how
That's good, thank you.
cherish our freedom.
Any other questions? Yes, yes.
Question, you didn't talk much about how you were treated by the Germans?
How I was treated by the Germans, you don't want to know.
I don't want to know?
No. No.
A little bit.
Well, if it was the Gestapo, it was pretty bad. Yeah.
John, may I ask, you had to sign a pledge of secrecy. What was that based on? What was so secret?
Well, the secret that they had was, France and Germany are so close together, right? And they're intermarried. So what if we gave away some secrets about somebody that conflicted with one another, and then go and shoot one another? And I don't know why they held it out that long. They should have stopped it right after the war.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, hang on.
I'm curious, when you said you were hiding in plain sight in Paris, how was your French? The American accent must have been there, even if you knew some French words.
The only time I was questioned that I answered, usually I'd walk with a fellow that loaned me his uniform, and he had another one, and we walked his route together. And I could never stay in the house because the Germans would have what they call the roast, and they would block off the whole block, and they would walk in and look for German Jews, and they would look for spies and Allied airmen, and they'd pick them up. So I had to just stay out of the house and move around the open. That's the way they did it in Paris. And in Reims, I could walk around in civilian clothes, and it was not as serious there. But in Paris, you had to have some a real good disguise. Next. Well, anyway, I got the books over here that I say I only got about 41, no, maybe 39 left because 2 of them are gone already, and all the secrets are in there. And if anybody wants one, I'll sign it, your name, and I'll autograph it for you.
Let's give John a great big hand.
Yeah.